What is up, everyone? This is James, the Ghost Set Killer, and this is Put 'em on the Glass podcast. We are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is urethane. And we have the master of urethane, Mr. Mike Stevens, with the Sika Corporation. Mike and I have been friends for a while. You've seen him on my show quite a few times. Mike, if you know, he's a celebrity with his new video out of the P2G Plus. Dude, I have probably watched that thing like 4,500 times. Just like every time it comes on, I stop and I'll watch it, and then I'll keep, every time it pops up in my algorithm. That was one of the coolest things Sika could have done. Real quick before we get into the nitty of the gritty, what did that feel like doing that, knowing the fact that you had to put the window in, that they were going to run into a wall?
Bro, so on the flight there, getting there, everything, the whole thing, it was like normal travel, and I didn't think anything of it. Um, we removed the windshield day one, and then day two we installed. And as I'm laying the bead on the body, because they wanted that for
Mm-hmm.
camera reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm laying the bead, that's what I'm thinking. Oh shit! Like if something goes south, like they're all gonna look at me. Like the first thing. I mean, obviously they're gonna look at everything, but
Yeah.
first thing they're gonna do is look at me. And so then the pressure was on. Um, but the whole experience, man, how awesome was that? A little nerve wracking, waiting the time, the MDAT time, and sitting back and just kind of making sure that I'm going through my head, the steps and making sure I'm doing everything complete and thorough. But yeah, man, and then smashing into the wall and seeing the retention, 100% retention, and seeing, that stuff in action, man, it's pretty awesome. I
Yeah.
can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like I was pumped for you when you had said you were doing it. I was super pumped. I can bet your butterflies in your stomach because at the end of the day, I know you and I have talked about this a few times. You and I both are technicians. Yes, we have different roles in the industry, and yes, we want to change the industry and make it a better industry for everybody that's following us coming into it. You know what I mean? We're going to mentor that generation, plus also correct some of the habits that our generation has. But we're both technicians. So I know for a fact that I confidently put vehicles on the road with no problem. But I've never seen one of mine crash tested. So I think that, I've seen some of mine that I've done that have been crashed afterwards, and
Yeah.
it's no issue. But the fact of the matter is that, like, it's a 2-hour driveway time now because it's P2G Plus. This isn't Ultimate, which is a half hour. This is P2G Plus, which is it
Premium.
called something
Premium.
else as well? Premium.
Premium. Yeah.
P2G Plus Premium. Yeah. So you've got that added. So you guys have reformulated it for the 2-hour driveway time instead of the normal 3-hour. Is that correct?
It is 3 hour.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
So the clock starts and you guys are probably all standing there bullshitting. And I know for a fact that was a one take. That was a one take. You didn't get another car. There was no other trying. So if it failed, it would have been out there for everybody to know that it failed. So it was a one take situation. So I think that part was super, super cool to see, but like, I know bullshitting, and I know if you're like me, which you are, you're a world-class technician. So the whole 2 hours you're standing there going, okay, I know I prepped right. The set was good. Everything looked good. I know my deck height was good. Okay, I did seem. You know what I mean? Like, you're going through that checklist, and like the whole time, even when people are talking to you, it's like, I know for a fact that it definitely was going through your head, because I know it would be mine 100%. I know exactly how it'd be.
Bro, the so it wasn't a perfect scenario either. You know what I mean? Like, I flew out there with no tools. I'm using Sika's tools, and they're assuring me that they have everything. And dude, the tools are like dated, and nothing wrong with them, but
No.
some of them, like it was the very first, the Viper, we were
Yep.
using the Viper, so I'm like,
Oh
holy shit,
God.
yeah, I haven't used this thing in a
Oh.
minute.
Yeah.
And then the scraper, I mean, they weren't, all of us technicians have our
Yeah.
own tools that we prefer to use.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did the best I could. And but when you're out of your element, and then there's a camera crew there, and then there's 5 Sika dudes there, and then my boss's there, and So there's a lot going on. It's not just the install, it's not just the nervousness of crashing it into a fixed barrier at 30 miles an hour. It's everything else around it, the lead up. Um, And you know what? I'm not one to get very nervous or, in fact, I kind of like those things. I invite them. I like it not when I used to install on a regular basis. I invited groups, I invited a crowd of people I want them to see, um, I kind of educate at the same time too. But this is a little different. And, there's a part of the video where like these guys are making me laugh as I'm cleaning too. So it looks like I'm like super smiling but these guys are, cracking up and I'm like, it was just a lot going on. And I'm glad how the result and how it turned out and super stoked that it worked out good, man. So it was awesome. Definitely something for me to kind of hang my hat on
Well,
and you know,
yeah, and as technicians, we look to that crash test data. Like we really do. Like we want to know the product we're using has been crash tested, what it looks like, what's the data. And I know that to be ISO 9001, you got to meet certain requirements for crash test data to be provided for you to get that certification, basically.
yeah.
So, but the fact that we know we got to see it, that part was so cool. Like I'm definitely. I'm very proud of you because it was cool. And then when you grab a hold of a caulking gun that's not yours, a new caulking gun or a caulking gun that's not yours, especially a used caulking gun that's not yours, that you don't know how it's going to perform,
Yeah.
that is like, that's almost worse than having like not the right cutout tool, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
having your own tools, but for me, like the feel of my caulking gun, it's something that I've developed that I really love. I know like some of them like a loose barrel. I like a tight barrel because I shoot the glass. I like to make sure that, the way that my gun, just we all know the
Yeah.
speeds and the variabilities. So that part is pretty cool that you were able to knock it out there. Cause I did see the bead obviously, and it was a good bead, bro. Like it was a good bead. That's another thing on the body, dude. Like on the body, I was given a demo, like, mind you, I hadn't ran a bead on a body in over almost 2 years, and I was given a demo of on the body, and I was like, I got done, and I was embarrassed. I was like, oh no, no, like that's no, like literally, I was like, we got to scrape that off, bro. Like that's no. So then, like on the glass, it's a laser, it's a laser line,
Yeah.
but on the
Yeah.
body for me, it's not so much. So
No,
it
yeah,
takes
because
me a
you're
minute.
reaching. You have the car. The glasses is right. You can set the height of the glass. If you want your cradle to sit lower or higher, you can. With the
Mm-hmm.
body, it doesn't really change much. And I'm a short, fat dude, and reaching is not high quality. Or I can't. It's not that efficient. So, and then they brought a cartridge gun, and I'm used to shooting sausage. I haven't shot
Oh.
cartridge
Mm-hmm.
since the '90s, and so yeah, it was a little bit of a challenge, but I'm totally up for it, and
Yeah, yeah, and
and
you stepped up to the plate, and I didn't realize you were shooting foils and not cartridge. So that part was kind of that adds a little bit more to the story. That I'm just like, man, he knocked it out of the park. All right, so we got that in our hands. So what you're going to learn today is we're going to be talking about urethane applications, and we're going to be talking about weather conditions. We all live in different parts of the country. Our urethane performs differently at different times of year, but there are certain, I guess, precautions you would say that a lot of technicians don't take into account. Mike is in a predominantly hot climate, but it's dry. So he has to really take that in consideration when he's working with his products and what he needs. I am in a multiple climate, but more than likely it's going to be cold a good portion of my year, and we are very humid most of the year round. So there are certain precautions that I have to take. I'm going to start it off with Mike because most urethanes recommend under 120. Um, and I know in Arizona, 120 on the body and in the car is easy to hit on an 85-degree day.
oh yeah,
So what would a technician that's in your field, in your, it's going to be hot. Your pinch weld is
yeah.
going to be over 120, which is going to affect the sag, which is going to affect a bunch of things with your urethane. What are some of the recommendations you give to technicians in those hotter climates where it's going to be super hot? Now you also are dry, so you're going to have a slower cure time as well. So that urethane is going to have to actually sit on the hotter body for a little bit longer, or hotter glass.
Yeah.
What are some of the precautions they need to be taking?
Well, first of all, the urethane, try to keep it as cool as possible, right? Like if you're driving, and this is for mobile guys. Now I know the shop guys actually have some of these issues too, but they're a little more controlled, you know.
Hmm.
The mobile guys, just keep it as cool, keep it with you. I tell the guys, keep it in the cab. If you drive a truck, put it in the cab. If you drive a van and it's in the back, bring it up front. If you're hot, it's hot. That's the way I say it. So keep it with you as much as you can in the AC or wherever you're comfortable. Um, and in the car too. Shade as much as possible if you can. For me, I um I used to carry sorry, I used to carry a Easy Up with me, and I didn't break it out all the time. It was only occasionally, like let's say I had two or more jobs at one location, then I'd break it out. It was more for me and my part, to keep the glass under and shade me and my tools if I was driving a truck. Um, but try to find a sliver of shade that you can park the car under. There's been many times where I tell the customer, "Hey, I'm gonna move the car. I'm gonna go put it on the side of the building where the shade is casting on this side, or excuse me, or to a neighbor's house, or ask them if I can use the garage." Um, our In my area, the customers aren't always thinking about the technician,
Yeah.
even though they may think they are, but we know best, right? The technicians know best of what we need and where we need to do these jobs. And I'll admit there was times when I was younger and I was like, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna move it. By the
Yep.
time we're done doing all that,
Yep.
I'm halfway done,
Yep.
you know? So, but as I got older and I didn't want to rush around and all that anymore, it became a big deal. And so I would just try to find shade as much as I could. Our maximum substrate temperature for uh, our higher end glues like Mach Series and Ultimate is at 170 degrees.
Oh,
But
okay.
but like you said though, it was last year, last July, we had over 100 days straight of above 110 degrees, which is a record for us out here. Um, so during that time, I took my electronic thermometer and went out to my car. And I think we talked about this before actually. And my dash, I have a fully tinted windshield. I have a black Explorer, and my dash was 168 degrees. It was 116 outside at the time. So it just goes to show you that it can easily hit those temps. Um, Now our premium is at 140. I think it's 140 degrees maximum substrate temp. So again, I mean, really, that would have been too hot for me to use that product.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you have to be aware of these things. I would just advise and really encourage mobile technicians to carry a barometer, a temperature gauge, so you can know your humidity, know your temperature, and be aware of your maximum substrate temps. And that's not just using our product, using anybody's product. Know these things because it makes a big deal. We get outgassing. We see outgassing here quite a bit, and that's because the glue is getting shot at a very, very high temp.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen what outgassing looks like, it's when you remove the windshield and then before you trim it, your bead or the existing bead looks like Swiss cheese or like a sponge. It has a bunch of holes in it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the molecule, that's the chemicals that are escaping too fast, and it's causing that gassing effect.
Mm-hmm.
So that's from extreme heat. And that's why we tell guys too during the winter, don't warm it up too much, or you'll also get that outgassing as well too.
Yeah. So I like you said there because I was getting ready to touch on this topic too. It's super important that if you're going to be using a urethane, whether it be the lower end urethanes, moisture cured lower end urethanes, or you're using the premium brand urethanes, the quick cure urethanes, half hour, to 2 hour, I would consider that, advanced cure urethanes that
Hmm.
you want to make sure that you understand at what humidity level you can use it at, and if it increases the minimum driveway time, your substrate temperatures. You want to know those, and because of like what Mike said, the off gassing, and not just the off gassing, um, if that starts to sag because it starts to bake it too soon, which is the curing too fast, the off gassing what he's talking about. But if the urethane is so hot that it's starting to sag or liquefy, your set's going to be off, and then it's going to just sink that glass. And it not only, it might not cause an issue right then, but let's say you're the tech that has to go back out and do that. And now that glass is slammed and there's ooze and it's just gnarly, and that glass is slammed to that pinch weld, then you've just created yourself a lot more work. Not alone issues of squeaking because it's not decked to the proper height, issues of, just all kinds of things. So when we're in the summer here in Ohio, obviously we're right about the 90 to 97% humidity at all times. So when we get to about the 100 to 105 mark, it feels hotter than that, but it's really not because of the humidity. For us in the summertime, it's actually, like you're talking about a little bit, it's the product skinning too fast. Like your work times, if you've got a high humidity area, you want to make sure that when it's hot outside that you're working within your work times. Do not let them elapse because it skins too fast. And then when you crush it, it doesn't have that explosion past that skin to create further contact with the VB being pushed down and out. So you want to make sure that you're keeping good track of your humidity as well, not just the temperature outside, but the temperature outside, it's hard on you. It's even harder on the product you're using because of the fact that it is an advanced cure and it takes temperature and humidity to cure it. If it cures too fast, it's a bad thing. If it cures too slow, it's a bad thing. So you really want to make sure you're really taking the steps Mike said. Find shade. Make sure you're recording or at least looking at what your surface temperature of your substrate is, of your glass. Get you one of those little thermal readers, hit it at it, and like, okay, I need to bring the temperature of this vehicle down just a little bit. Like he said, at 116, it was 168 at his dash. So that's only 2 degrees of fluctuation between that plastic dash and that metal body that he could be, where he's at the upper limits of his urethane failing because he's at that high temperature. So in the winter, I'll go ahead and I'll tackle some winter stuff here. Not too much is different when it comes to the product, except for in the wintertime, keep it in your cab with you when you're in the van, and do not put it on your defroster because it unevenly heats it. And if it gets too hot, it could tend to start to cook some of those props and create some of that off-gassing that Mike was talking about premature in the foil. I like to keep mine on the, on the floor on the heater, and keep the floor, the vent pointing to the floor as well. And then, keep it in the box. But also in the wintertime, more so than the summertime, but the summertime, you still might want to do this. You want to make sure you're taking your urethane inside at night to keep it at a stable temperature. I know you're supposed to store it at 70 degrees or lower, or between, the 50, 70 degree mark. So if it gets too cold in the winter, not only does Ultimate become a brick to push, but it's just because it's such a viscous glue, almost all of them act like that. But you want to bring them inside. You don't want it sitting in your van overnight in those extreme temperatures, whether it be heat or cold. Into the shop, into the van. Only maybe just start taking what you need per jobs +1. So that way when you're done with your end of the day, you only have one to bring inside. Or, report or push back to the van, because you want to make sure that you're not leaving them inside and then warming them super quick by throwing them up on your dash. That's something you definitely don't want to do. And if Mike, if any of my advice is off, please stop me and let me know, because this is just the way that I perceive things, and I want to make sure that I'm on point when I'm telling these things to people. So in the wintertime, when the substrate would get down, because once it hits 0 degrees outside and negative temperatures, first of all, once it hits under 30, you got to increase your primer flash times. Okay.
Yes. Well, the activator is at, for our product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For Sika, anything below 15 degrees, you have an extended time on activator drying, a flash off time, which is 10 minutes versus the 3. Our primer 207 is 0 degrees, or is no regular. It's all the way 3 minutes all the way down to 0 degrees, no matter.
Unless you're using it on a porous surface.
If you use we have 0 regulation on the primer 207.
Okay.
Now, if you're using it on, are you saying like a gasket Cascadia or something like that?
That or trimmed urethane or anything like that. So I thought once you trimmed the urethane, you would go 10 minutes. But It's been a minute since I've been trained in Sika, so I do know that when last time I was trained, 207 was once you drop below 30, you increased it to 10 minutes to flash off time. So I don't know if they've reformulated it, retested it, but that was the last training I received.
To be 100% honest, we don't get below 100 degrees here in hell. So, no, I mean, of course, there's mountains here, and
Mm-hmm.
there are
Yeah.
cooler temps, but I don't deal with a lot of cooler temps.
Yeah.
Apologies for not being too versed on the cold stuff, but um, when I do, our certifications, it does say zero, but I'm sure that with certain circumstances on vehicles, or certain applications that there is
Mm-hmm.
some different flash time. So,
So what we're
my
telling you to
apologies for
do
that.
is make sure that you receive your training and make sure that you have your documentation on you at all times. So that way,
Yes.
if you're ever in question, you can pull up the text document and look, or you reach out to your rep right away. What we started doing, and this is because I am a bitch. When it gets cold, I get fucking whiny. I hate it. Big James used to make fun of me all the time, but immediately when we got to the car, we would put the defroster on. And
Yeah.
then obviously keep all the doors shut and everything and let the car run and then warm up inside as we're doing our disassembly, as we're talking to the customer, as we're getting ready for different things. And then we want to make sure that from cutout to install the windshield, everything's acclimated, meaning
Yeah.
that when I get to the job, I pull the glass out and let it start acclimating to that temperature that's in there. I start to bring that pinch weld up to a temperature that when I run my urethane on the glass, I don't get condensation. When I set it in the car, the two substrates touching at different temperatures, I don't get condensation, which causes it to cure quicker. Um, you know, because, if you pull it out of the van and you immediately start running glue, the condensation, it causes that urethane to cure over real quick. So it doesn't receive any bond. So then it's just a
Yeah.
failure at that point. And the same thing with the substrate, the urethane to urethane bond as well. So I want my products to be close to the same temperature. So that means I might have to warm the car up. But the minute we get there, that glass comes out and it starts sitting out into the cold. And then you start wiping it off because we wipe it off when we don't let the condensation evaporate, which evaporation rate's super slow, but we don't let that happen because if there's any contaminations, we want to make sure we bring it up. But also we can't really use our glass cleaner in those situations because it freezes as we're cleaning. So
Damn.
so we can't, so we prep at the shop. And then when we get it out into the actual, the condensation, we'll hit it with some warm glass cleaner. It's been sitting up front, and then we'll clean it, and then we let it acclimate. Because once it's so cold, you're cleaning, the glass cleaner's freezing as it sits on there. So you only want
Dude.
to as little exposure as possible with that.
Wow.
And when cleaning the pinch weld, we definitely clean before we trim, because that way we don't have to spray glass cleaner on there and then have it freeze over as we're wiping it away. You don't want to drag contaminants into your freshly trimmed urethane anyways. But if you're one that trims and then cleans and then activates to reactivate, the molecules to get things happening in the wintertime, that is a big no-no because everything wants to freeze. Now, I know the activator doesn't freeze, but everything else that you're using to clean that area freezes on you. And if you don't get it out of the way, then you just have that frozen spot. So those are two big things for us would be acclimating the substrates, getting the glass to the temperature because your van's warm inside and it's cold outside. You're dealing with condensation, and you want that really cold pinch weld to come up a little bit so that way you're close in temperature, so you don't have the condensation that you have to worry about otherwise. But we want to make sure that for us that vehicle's not open super long time, so everything's pretty much done and ready. We'll cut out, we'll do our trim, we'll make sure we wait our flash times, and then we're putting it in because we don't want it to be open that long because of the fact that yes, it's colder, the air, there's not as much humidity, so it's going to but the fact that you create humidity with the differences in temperature with your product and substrates, that you don't want it to cure too fast in that situation. So the winter time, there's huge considerations you got to take into effect. I
Yeah.
know the summer as well, the heat, but winter I tell you what, for us it's hard. We'll sit under zero for quite a few weeks for sure.
Dude, I need to come out there and do some installs with you or somebody out in that area because I don't know that. You know, the coldest it gets here is, we'll get into 30s, we'll get to freezing here. But by midday, by 10 a.m., 11 a.m., then it's back to, 60s, something like that, middle of winter. But and I know we have a whole set of issues during the summer that
Mm-hmm.
maybe some of the other guys in the parts of the country will have to deal with as well. But
Mm-hmm.
um, wow, it's crazy to have to deal with that, But and kind of going back a little bit, what you're bringing up is prep, right? Like so during my presentation, when I do our certification, one of the things I kind of point out and really kind of harp on is it's tip number 2 in our tip list, which is start with the glass. And the reason why is because all of these things, you're first of all, you're getting if you're using a product that requires primer and you're prepping, you're inspecting, you're making sure you have all your rain sensor, your heater, and all that stuff is being molding on, all being done first. And that way, there's nothing holding up after you apply, like we talked about earlier. But with this too, to be able to get all these things done. Like, so you would leave the glass out in the elements, not prep it, do everything, put the molding on, put your maybe suction cups on, and then throw it back. Let's say you have a van, put it back in the van, you leave it out.
You leave it out. You do not throw it back in the van because of the difference in temperature. Going in, it'll condensate, but it'll sit and it'll acclimate to the temperature in the van as you're working on the rest of the car. So when you pull it back out, it immediately condensates. Now, once you get
Wow.
below zero, and once you get below, like when you're hit about the -10 to -12 mark, when you pull it out, that condensation then will start to freeze. So then you got a layer of ice that you have to contend with as well. So, once you get so low, as you pull it out, then that difference in temperature, nice warm van, 50, 60-degree van, because it's in the back. It is in the back. So, you got your headache rack that's blocking some of that airflow. And a lot of our cargo vans do not have heater vents back in the back. So it does stay cooler back there, but it's warm enough to where when you pull it out of your van, it'll condensate. And so you got a layer of moisture on there you have to deal with. And then once it gets so cold outside, then, like I very rarely had to install out in less than 30 degrees because of the company I
Okay.
worked for. Once it dropped below 30, we were bringing them in shop, or they had to have a heated garage. But I have
Okay.
been on some companies I've worked for where that wasn't the case, and you were out in negative temperatures. But once you drop below the 30-degree mark, you can still experience condensation when you're outside. You show up to a customer's house, they say they got a heated garage, you go in there and there's no insulation, and it's a little kerosene heater or an electric heater inside in one of the corners, and it literally is 0 degrees outside. You get in there and it's only 15, 20 degrees inside the building. You're still, because your products will work down to 0, you still have to do it. I can't say, hey, I can't do this. You know what I mean? No, I still had to do it. But we tried to get once it dropped below 30, we tried to get most of them in the shop. But I do know that there's plenty of times when it's like, yeah, it's freezing on you as you pull it out of your van. So it makes sense to prep it, get it ready, and then put it back in the van. It really does. But it's detrimental to you if you do that, because of
Yeah.
the fact that you have that moisture that the two different temperatures creates condensation, and then you have
Yeah.
that on there. And if it freezes, let's say you do a good job you thought you did a good job of cleaning it up before it had time to freeze, but you didn't 100%, and now it's in your bonding line and it's frozen, kind of thing. So for me, once I got the glass out at the location, once the condensation, I cleaned it off and got it all, cleaned off, and then I got my part ready the rest of the way, it stayed outside.
It
It
stays
really did.
dry
It
too.
stays dry. It obviously raining or snowing, you got to do something different because it's got to be inside anyways. But like
Yeah.
if it's a nice, crisp, cold day, it stayed dry. There was no issues there. But like I said, you want to make sure that your substrate was close to that temperature. So that's where the defroster inside the car, warming the metal inside the car up, helped.
Hmm.
So that's another thing that we did was we tried to warm the inside of the car up so that the way that metal, the pinch weld, because just like, once it's 100 degrees outside, that heat heats that metal up faster than what the temperature that's outside. So, because the UV rays and stuff, it does a similar thing in the cold. That pinch weld could be, if it's 10 degrees outside, that pinch weld could be 0, because
Do
the
you
metal.
notice a difference in aluminum bodies, or let's say FRP, let's say a Corvette or something that
Mhm.
has composite? Do you notice a difference in that type of
What I will
body?
say,
Like,
what I will say is aluminum tends to sweat more. And this could just be me experiencing something different than the actual physics behind what it happens. But for me, um, because steel will sweat. Obviously, we know that. So if it's warmed up and it's cold outside and it's warmed up, steel will sweat. So you got to deal with that as well. If you get it too hot, the difference temperature is too hot between the outside and you've warmed it up too much, then you've got
yeah,
you got the sweat of the metal. And I have noticed aluminum definitely um, sweats more than steel, in my opinion. Because I just from cleaning up, I know I have to clean up way more moisture off the body if I heat it up too much inside than I have to if I don't heat it up at all. Um,
interesting.
yeah, now FRP, once it gets super cold, it definitely is way more brittle as far as
Hmm.
the way it feels when you're working on it. Um, I don't know. Obviously, there's no difference in moisture content there when we're doing big RVs and stuff and it's cold. Um, for me, FRP is not that big of a deal when it comes to Corvette bodies and different things like that. There's really no. Now, obviously, the material, the fiberglass is going to be tighter because it's cold, so
Yeah.
it's tighter. So it may creak and crack and make some more as you're moving it. It may make some more noise, but it definitely doesn't seem like there's any issues. But I will say, for me, I fought more condensation from overwarming a car with aluminum than I did steel. Now,
Yeah.
physics and chemistry may say otherwise, but for me, what I've noticed with aluminum is that you'll have a lot more cleanup with moisture, excess moisture.
Yeah. It's funny, like out here too, as a tech, I could tell the different color of paint of the temperature of the cars being hot. Like green, of course, black is hot, right? But
Hmm.
that dark green, that Honda used to run for a little while, that color would get so hot. And I remember burning my neck on a hood one time. Um, yeah, dude. I did it on one of the hydraulic rods one time too, like pulling off
Uh huh.
wipers. Aye. Um, but I noticed the green was really hot. But yeah, out here it's definitely a struggle. I mean, I think the guys out here. I mean, for me anyway, I had a whole setup for summer versus winter. And even including my clothes. You know this.
Oh yeah.
Hats and shirts and shorts or whatever you're wearing. Um, Recently Trey brought up something. He's a no glove. Trey Black.
Oh
With
my God. Yeah, yeah. Trey's a no
you know
glove guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
He's a no glove guy. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
and I totally understand. So, he's in a humid state and we're hot. So somebody there's some people in the comments bringing up some good things about sweat, when
Hmm.
you got those gloves on, and I know it when my hands are up, sweat's coming down and it's dripping and it's all over the car. So, um, I do see his point, man, but side note, I can't believe some of these guys go on his like business page and are like criticizing. That's one of the things I was telling you about earlier. Like,
Yeah.
I want to go on there and say, come on, guys, like, don't go on his personal page. Do that in the group.
Yeah. No,
You know?
100%. Don't go on his business page where,
Yeah.
um, now with the sweat, like what you're talking about, in the summertime for us, in the sweat, I I tend to wear long sleeves for a good portion, but once it hits summer too much, I will short sleeve it. I'm always a pants guy, and sweat does drip down.
Yeah.
We started to wear for 15, 20 years headbands and wristbands, like straight
Hmm.
up 80s, like 100%. Now that we didn't do it while we were just driving down the road or anything. Yeah, we weren't sweating to
Jazzercising?
the, yeah, we weren't jazzercising while we were going down the road. But as soon as you got to that job, because I love the heat, but people, when I tell people that, they have this misconception that because I love the heat, I somehow can trick biology and not sweat. That's the weirdest thing in the world to me, because when most of the time I can wring my shirts out. That's why these polos that are moisture wicking are super nice. You can take them off and wring them out and you're good.
Yep.
but I'll do the wristbands. I'll do the headband because I have noticed when I'm running my glue sometimes and I don't have my headband on, that sweat will drip down. And if it's in the bonding line, I have to stop. I have to
Yeah.
stop and I have to correct it because I don't want to create that contamination. Now I've never had, which I got little girl hands, so I've never had to the glove product that Trey has where they don't, even no matter how sweaty I am, I just hit them with a blower. Like I literally, I'll take my forced air blower, my Milwaukee blower, and boop boop real quick, and then I put my hands in. It's like, well, that's easy enough. A lot of people blow into them, but like I just use my blower and boom. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's beside the point. But
I do
you,
this. This is what I do when I drive. When I'm
oh
if
yeah,
I'm working on the car and I'm
yeah,
going like that,
yeah, yeah.
customers probably looking at me like, what is that guy doing?
Yeah, you take them off and you're so sweaty that you're doing one of these. Oh yeah, absolutely, dude. Yes, yes, 100%. That is something that we all do, and I've done. And it was real bad because even though we were inside with all the competitions with my nerves, I would sweat a lot. So for me, it was I'd wear the hat instead of the headband. I wore a hat, and because of the fact that I wanted to make sure that I was able to stay dry and not drip in my pinch weld area or my because it's not just your glass area. You're up there prepping your pinch weld. You can sweat all over that
Right.
as well. And as far as you're talking about the different colors being different temperatures, dude, we always had this one, and I know you do as well. The one job, they come out, they work for whoever, but they'll unlock their car for you, but they can't give you the keys and they can't move it. And it is in the middle of a blacktop parking lot. It's a black car and all the windows are up. So you get there and you open that thing up, and it's like opening up an oven. It just hits you. It's like a wave of heat. You're just like, oh, wow. You know? So you got to take that in consideration when you're talking about, urethane and, being your environment and everything. We've touched on that part. And if we've missed something, please hit us up and let us know because I want everybody's opinion on whether you're a urethane rep, whether you're a urethane trainer, whether you're a technician, whether you're somebody who just understands this. If we're missing something, let us know because I want to get the information out there for everybody to know and to have so that way they're better prepared. So this is going to be a little bit of a longer show because I'm going to try to go a little bit longer because I want to not only address the urethane portion of this, because I want to tackle briefly application and then the human technician that is doing the job as well. We're going to talk about some of that stuff. But for application in the wintertime, if you're using a very viscous product, whether it be from any of the urethane manufacturers, and it's super cold outside and you have it somewhat warm in your front of your van, you want to roll that out before you gun it because if you don't, it'll prematurely wear out some of the gears in your caulking gun because they're so viscous that they're pretty hard to push, and especially in the wintertime. So you want to just take on a surface and just roll it out and just start to mold that urethane a little bit. Just start to get it to where it's moving in your hands a little bit so it's easier for the caulking gun to push in the cold weather. Now, the cold weather, that bead will stand up nice and straight. It'll be nice and viscous, and you will have to make sure that you deck that product, which is something I like because I want to set my windshield to a certain height and a certain, center of the vehicle. But in the wintertime, you want to make sure that you are molding your urethane before you throw it in your gun to just go push it because your gun will drag down. It'll prematurely wear out batteries. Those guns aren't cheap. The urethane guns are not cheap. So make sure that you're doing that in the wintertime. As far as application goes in the summertime, Mike, what would you recommend as far as application and protection of their tools?
Oh well, it's the urethane application. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
As far
Like
as
how,
application.
like for us, in the heat, you could have some sag, and then also it'll flow out of the gun easier. So you're going to make sure that your
Yeah.
speed's right. You want to make sure, because we got to keep it as close to 90 as possible. So when it gets hot, it's a lot more pliable. So you won't have to roll
Yeah.
it out as much. And then also it flows out of the gun so much easier that you may need to change your speed if you start to, and also sometimes it may be one of those things where it's soft enough to where you might have to put an actual decking block to stop it from going too far if it's super soft or something. That's kind of what I was talking about.
No, definitely. So a couple things on this. So kneading it. First thing guys love to do, and I used to do it too, is grab the sausage and you start to knead it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't exactly uh, I don't want to even say approve, but when we tell guys is to roll it out, but we've got a couple fixes of it. The reason why a lot of guys were needing our product is because it was kind of out of round. So when sliding into the sausage, I'm sorry, into the barrel, it would kind of get caught, right? So guys would need it,
Mm-hmm.
and then it would slide right in. So that kind of breaks down some of the sag properties. So we don't exactly advise that during the summertime. That's why we say to roll it. And I've made a couple videos on it to keep that round. Well, what we've done is we actually tried to improve that with changing our packaging. I don't know if you've seen our new packaging and seen our new tips, but we're now starting to package our sausages vertically. So they're actually being stacked like that as well too. Before, when they were, you know, not vertical, they would tend, weight would kind of smash them out, and they would get out of round, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's why going into the barrel was a little difficult. So we changed that. So hopefully that'll kind of uh, help with that going on and not needing it, because that way again you're kind of helping the sag when that happens. But that's why proper, tip placement, holding the gun at a 90-degree angle, slowing down your gun during the winter, letting that product build. You know, and I've done it too. You let's say you got only about 400 or 500 milliliters of that 600 milliliter sausage, and you're trying to get it all out, and it's your last tube, let's say, and you're trying to run it, during the summertime, that could cause some decking issues. So letting the bead build, keeping it cool, obviously, first of all, letting it build, try not to knead it, and keeping that tip flat will assure that you're getting your proper footing. Um, Now, this is the summertime, of course, why I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about, because we know that, during the summer, especially in our temp in the Southwest, not just Arizona, Texas, California, New Mexico, Florida, where it gets warm too, and all these other warm states, Georgia, it will thin out. The product does thin out. It loses some viscosity. So uh, be aware of that, and just slow down a little bit. That's all we ask, and make sure you're just doing everything the proper way. Keeping it cool is the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it with you, because if it's going to be super hot and super thin, then you could have some decking issues, and squeeze out. Let's say you're
Mm-hmm.
doing a newer style Mustang with no molding, and all of a sudden now you got squeeze out. And for me, that I was super critical about my glue lines. Um, so I mean, it is a big deal, especially let's say you're a high end guy and you're doing Porsches and Audis all day. Porsche, especially their SUVs, was it the Cayman, I believe? If you overdeck that, they will cause a or the Taycan or whatever. I don't know how you pronounce it, but they'll cause a wind noise, like a
Mm-hmm.
vortex. It's not letting air or water in. It's just creating some sort of air noise, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why those depth gauges are really, really important.
I use the depth gauge on just about everything, because of that, because it started from back in the day was just always deck it just a low, just below or a little bit lower than the roof height was the general consensus. Well, then it was like, well, if you do that on a Tesla, it creates because of the cyclone effect on top above the car, and it's pulling up on the car nowadays because of the aerodynamics, that it actually does create an air noise if it's too low.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that, so then I started using the depth gauge on Teslas, and then I just transferred it over because of what you're talking about. If you overdeck something, and just like as if you underdeck something, you're going to create a wind noise, because vehicles are getting quieter and quieter. Cabin noise is reduced because of, structural adhesives. But when you're not decked to the proper height, it'll overcome that structural adhesive sound deadening. And because the engine can't cover it up, unless you're listening to the music on fucking nine or 10,
Yeah.
whatever, then you're going to hear that noise, and you're immediately going to think that something is structurally wrong with your windshield when it's not. But it's a noise that you can't ignore as a driver, So,
Yeah.
but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're decking it to the right height and all that. And in the winter, same thing. Don't need it, because you're pushing and allow it. So you just want to roll it out to where it's a proper, to where it starts to get softer just a little bit, to where you can put it in your gun, and your gun can push it out. All right. So with that being said, you've got that part. Last 13, 14 minutes here, we're going to talk about the human element when it comes to these temperatures. I'm going to start with the winter, and I'm going to pass it on to finish Mike to finish off the extreme heats. Okay, in the wintertime, when you obviously you're going to layer your clothing. Okay, like what I like to say is you want to have 5 inches of clothing for 2 inches of dick. You want to make it hard to piss when you're in the bathroom. So I always layered up, dude. Like I just
I'm
layered and layered
screwed
up.
then, bro.
Yeah,
I am
I'll tell you.
screwed.
I always just layered up, bro. Like, so you start with your base layer, and then you go with a light layer, and then you want to layer. You don't want just super thick clothing because what we do, the more clothing you get on, it's harder to move, and we have to be agile. So I never really liked the coveralls. I did wear them from time to time. I didn't like the big bulky jackets. Like I had a Milwaukee jacket that's heated. I thought, oh, this is gonna be great, but it was too much. It was too bulky.
Mhm.
Working around a car and different things. So a lot of times I would go base layer, t-shirt, regular sweatshirt, and then a hoodie, so I can remove it as I get, as it warms up or as I get hotter. And then the pants was base layer, 2 pair of sock, and then my pants, because I always wore pants and they were a little bit thicker because I want to make sure I'm able to move. But also make sure you're protecting your hands when you don't have them in cut gloves or nitro gloves. Make sure you have a pair of gloves on to keep your hands warm so you don't get that Raynaud's disease to where your fingertips go numb. So you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself in that aspect. Short burst of heat when you're in the vehicle is great. Like in the summertime, I would roll around with my windows down and air conditioning on because I wanted to make sure that I was acclimated to both temperatures and didn't have a huge heat swing. So make sure that, you keep your van warm, but not overly warm. You want to get in and then slowly warm your body temperature up as well. So that way, if you need to take off the top layer because you're sweating inside your car, driving to the next one, it's easy to take off, but you can also bump that heat down a little bit. When you are outside, people don't realize that you actually will dehydrate the same in the winter as you will in the summer. So you want to make sure you're drinking plenty of fluids with electrolytes, because even though you're not sweating as much, you are still losing a lot of fluid through your breath. Okay, through breathing, through your pores, through different, your body is actually heating itself up, trying to heat itself up basically because it's cold outside, like your head's cold or a certain part of your body's cold. Your body is going to start to warm itself up just out of self-preservation. So you want to make sure that you're hydrating. I always like to, in the winter, I always like to take a bunch of snacks with me because I want to eat every hour to 2 hours to keep that metabolism humming, to keep my core body temperature up. I'm a fat guy. I like to eat anyways, so that was not hard for me. And in the, make sure that you lose a lot of heat from your head. So a toboggan, which I know it's called a beanie, it's called different things. In Ohio here, we call it a toboggan. So you want to make sure you're wearing some sort of head and ear protection, because, frostbite's a real thing, but you do lose a lot of heat. Heat regulation comes through the top of your head, palms of your hands, and the base of your feet. So if you can keep, as much heat as you can in there and then keep your core warm, you're going to be better off in the wintertime. But we still need to move, so do not overly dress yourself when you're working on a vehicle, because you can jump in and get warm at different periods, but you want to make sure you're being safe ergonomically. So if you can't move and put yourself in the perfect position because you got so many clothes on, you're actually hurting yourself because you could have a fall. There's all kinds of different things. That's another thing you want to take into consideration in the winter. Get out and look at your surroundings around the vehicle because there could be ice, and you want to make sure if you can move that vehicle, you do. If you can't, you want to make sure that if you can't throw something down to eliminate that ice, you just want to make sure that you're conscious of where it's at so you don't fall as you're working around the car. Plastic's brittle in the winter, so you have that you need to take into consideration as well. But when it comes to us as human beings in the wintertime, layers, hydrate, and make sure you eat and look at your surroundings. And that's what I'll give you tip-wise for the winter. I'm going to kick it over to you for the summertime, Mike.
Okay, well, for me, so I wasn't and I work with plenty of guys who are full covered. They'll like the fishing style, long sleeve with a hoodie, really thin material, fully covered guys, wearing pants, wearing shirts, long sleeve shirts. I wasn't that guy. Um, but I see the effects. If you're sweating in that keeps you cool. I'm just not a big fan of working in my own sweat, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So my whole gear has kind of evolved over time, but in the end, it was, you know, polo shirt, something like this. But underneath, I would wear a full, one of these like cool shirts. I think Costco sells them super cheap, but they're like that really thin material. Um, and I would wear those underneath to absorb the sweat. So that way, if I needed to go have lunch with a customer or go into Home Depot to pick up a tool or something, I didn't have a giant sweat ring, around my gut, you know. So I had something underneath to kind of absorb all that. Obviously, a sun hat I would wear. I used to wear straw hats, but then they would start to get brittle and break down and leave, material behind. So then I switched to bucket hats. So just some sort of cover, and that's ventilated. Obviously, staying hydrated, plenty of water, electrolytes. Gatorade is good too, but for me, not too much of that because there's a lot of sugar in that. But just water. Um, if it's lukewarm, I guess that's okay because now your body doesn't have to work as hard to warm it down, warm it up. But I just don't see the refreshment part of that. It's got to be cold for me. Bucket hat, of course. So then protecting your tools, your part, and your vehicle as far as trying to keep it as cool as possible. For me, I worked out of a van for many, many years and a truck, but I would cover tools like let's say my caulking gun or my suction cups. They're sitting there exposed to the sun and they're bloody hot when I go to grab them. So I cover those. I would keep a towel and cover certain tools that are exposed to the sun. So, and of course, trying to keep an easy up with me if I could. Even if I couldn't protect the car, I would at least try to cover the part.
Hmm.
Keep something cool. Um, and just being wise, you know what I mean, as far as your heat. There's a lot of, I mean, I remember the first year, and I'm from California originally. I installed 9 years out there in Southern California in the low desert Hemet area, and it gets hot there. We get above 112, in the summertime. But coming to Arizona was a whole nother monster. So learning how to adapt in this area and just staying hydrated, eating proper amount. When you start to feel a certain way, don't just keep going. Us dudes, you know how we are. We're like, ah, fuck it, it'll work out. I'm good. Well, there was my first summer here. I was feeling sick in the middle of a summer, and it ended up getting some slight dehydration, a little bit of too much sun exposure.
Hmm.
So I learned from that, and it just became a habit. Every morning I was stopping to fill up my ice chest, bunch of drinks, water. Um, Even on the super hot days, I had enough room for my urethane to throw in there right before the job. If it was
Yeah.
too hot, I would throw in there to cool it down. So, um, out here, like I said, it's a different monster when it comes to summertime, just like it is with wintertime with you guys. You have a
Hmm.
whole different setup. So, but really just being cautious and protecting yourself against the car too. Like, when we're in there, um, let's say you're reassembling the shell on a review mirror on something and it's hot, and you're out in the summer and you're sitting there looking up and sweating on everything in the car, leaving your prints behind you, your elbow, you're not even doing anything, but you lean up against the car. Now there's a sweat print there. So, um, I also was one of those techs where I try to leave the car better than I found it. So cleaning up after yourselves, don't leave any type of evidence that you were even there.
Hmm.
Customer will appreciate that. Um, but yeah, it's I think those are probably the majority of the things that I would say off the top of my head, about trying to keep yourself safe and try to stay as cool as possible. I used to keep one of those little Milwaukee fans with me. Well, that's
Yep.
another thing I used
Yep.
to do
Yep.
too.
Yep.
So I did run a power inverter, but in the summertime, customers sometimes think that the garage is a cooler place for you, which it can be from the shade, but it gets muggy and if there's no circulation in there, it gets hotter in the
Hmm.
garage than it does outside. So if uh if I was lucky enough to have a customer who had a garage door, an access service door, I would prop that open and I would use their plug or my cord and my power inverter and I'd run a fan, a box fan, a loud
Hmm.
ass fucking box fan
Yeah.
just to get some air circulating. I used to hang one in my van one time or at some point, to keep the air, when I grab my tools, it's sitting there
Yep.
blasting on me, even though it's hot air, but
Hmm.
it's still circulating.
It's still
So
moving air.
Yeah, keep a fan with you, even if it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those battery powered ones by Milwaukee,
Yep.
DeWalt, or Rigid. All those guys make it. Or
Yep.
if you run an inverter or generator, bring a fan and
Yeah.
plug it in. You never know when you're going to be inside, outside. Maybe you need to cool off the customer's car, like you said. You got a car, it's middle in the parking lot. You open the doors, try to cool it off, and you got a fan to point it in the car and blow out some of that hot air. It could help.
Yes.
Every little bit helps.
Perfect. Absolutely. So we're going to leave you here with the signs of a heat stroke and signs of hypothermia and signs of dehydration. So heat stroke, if you have an intense headache that comes on all of a sudden and you're feeling lethargic, your words are slurring, and or it feels heavy to pick up your arms. Okay, that is the blood flow being pushed up and out, which means that you are in the first stages of a heat stroke. If you stand up and you feel faint, like super quickly, make sure that you get yourself cooled down. Your core body temperature is too warm. As far as hypothermia, if you feel like it is super cold outside, but you feel like it's 150 degrees outside and you're starting to take off clothing, okay, and your extremities are starting to hurt extremely bad, that means you are in the beginning stages of hypothermia, and you want to make sure you get yourself somewhere to get your temperature regulated. Okay, your body is working overtime. It's throwing you into a fever because you are becoming hypothermic, and you need to make sure that you're keeping an eye on that. When it comes to dehydration, this one here, it's not just that feeling in your mouth, that dry feeling in your mouth. You will start to feel nauseous. You will start to have very, very, very heavy legs. A headache will start to set in, but it's not as intense as if it's a heat stroke. It's just a slight one. It's just dull, nagging. You will start to feel tired, but the tiredness that you feel isn't like, oh my God, I can go to sleep. That's a heat stroke. The tiredness you're feeling is like, just to move, you feel like it's like an uphill battle just to even move forward. You're starting to actually dehydrate. And it's not just water you want to replenish with, because if you're dehydrated or you're starting to dehydrate and you just replenish with water, you flush out the rest of the electrolytes and you can actually die from that. So what you want to make sure that you're starting to do if you're starting to dehydrate is that you're sipping electrolytes. So a water-based, like non-sugar, sugar's fine, because the electrolytes will actually attach itself to the sugar, be absorbed in the bloodstream a little bit quicker, blah, 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 blah. But, Pedialyte is really good. There's some other zero sugar ones that aren't as harsh on your stomach when you are actually starting to dehydrate, which you're starting to get some gastrointestinal issues from the dehydration, because you no longer have the fluids inside your body slushing around to try to, your blood's not as thin, you know what I mean, because the water started. Anyways, there's all kinds of little things like that. But make sure that you're slowly replenishing yourself, because if you replenish yourself too fast, you can start to faint. But if you replenish yourself with just water, there you do run the risk of, passing away. I mean, more people die from overhydration than they do from actual dehydration. So like if the runners that overhydrate, more runners have died from overhydration or hydrating too quickly once they are dehydrated, that they're flushing out too much of their electrolytes, and it throws off their electrical imbalance, and then they actually pass away from it because their heart will stop.
Wow, that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those are some of the tips to take care of yourself. Take care of your thing. Take care of yourself, and you will be a better technician. I've been James, the Ghost Set Killer, and he has been
Mike, I'm I don't know, the Sika guy.
He's
I gotta
Sika
come up
Mike.
with, I gotta come up with some slogan
So slogan, yeah. Sika
well,
guy,
Mikey Nice. We'll go with Mikey Nice. That's me.
Mikey Nice. He has been Mikey Nice with the Sika Corporation, and once again, I know this is an hour-long episode, but I really feel that this is something that needs to be talked about for some time. There's been a lot of questions on the groups, and so hopefully we've answered some. And remember, if we've got something wrong or we need to relook at something, please leave it in the comments. Reach out to Mike or myself, and we will gladly redo it, because we want the best, most up-to-date information out to the technicians, so that way they are the most professional they can be in the field. And we are done.